Shock Monkey Radio is entertainment for adults, by adults, and the views and opinions expressed here do not reflect upon the sponsors or FXBG Public Radio. For additional information, please refer to the United States Bill of Rights. Stand warned. I just had a hankering for a Little Caesars deep dish pizza. They got little small, 4-slice little pizza. Usually $5-6 to get it. That's all I wanted. I had a hankering for it this past week, but it turns out I went to Little Caesars twice looking for this thing, and both times I left empty-handed. The first time I went in there was Veterans Day, and there's this nice young lady behind the counter there, and she, I don't know, about 10, 15 years younger than me, nice-looking mid-30s lady, and she's like, oh, I was like, do you have the deep dish personal pan? She's like, no, the special. And they had a little sign up there that said Veterans Day special, so I didn't know anything about any special. I may be a veteran, but I'm not in here, saying I want to pay less for some of your product. I just had a hankering for the pan pizza that day. So she says, no, we're all sold out of it, or they've given the last away like at 2 p.m. or something like that. And I like to eat late sometimes. And so I was like, oh, that's no problem. I guess I'll come back at a different day. And she's like, oh, but thank you for your service. You can have a free soda. I was like, no, I'll come back and I'll pay the proper price for what I want. And that's all I want is just a personal pan pizza. So I gave him 2 days to restock. I come back and there's a different young lady, much younger. I don't know, 18, maybe 19 years old, very sullen, kids that age, very sullen, very, what's the word, disinterested in whatever they're doing. And so I asked, hey, yeah, I was wondering if I could get a personal pan pizza, just a small one. And she's like, well, that special is over. It ends at 2. And I was like, yeah, but, can I pay extra for you to make it? I'm willing to pay extra for you to make it. And I'll wait for it. If I have to, that's no problem. And she's like, no, probably not. And it's like, is there any way I can get an order of this personal, the half of a deep dish pizza? And she said, maybe if you got on the app, placed an order on the app. So I blinked a couple times. And I just started saying, are you telling me that there's no way for you to place an order? The register's right here. You are right here. I am right here placing this order. Are you telling me there's no way that I can get that product made unless I bring the internet into this? This is why I physically come to your location. All right? It's because I don't want to download an app of every single place, every single establishment that I might decide to visit. I don't want their apps crowding up my phone. I don't want their advertisements constantly in my face. I don't want you to have my address. I don't want you tracking my movements. Just make me a damn personal deep dish pizza. Cheese or pepperoni, I don't care. I'd buy a soda too. But that's not what I said. That's what I screamed at my windshield on my way to Popeyes. What I said to that young lady was, thank you for your time, and I left. Because this stuff is absurd. I don't see why businesses are getting involved in this kind of stuff. It's driving me absolutely mad. Anyway, welcome to Shock Monkey Radio. I'm your host, the Madman. Thank you for sitting through that longer tirade than usual. Usually I like to hit you hard. I still think there's compression on this microphone. When the studio rearranges, it's sometimes you use a compressed mic. I mean, it's brilliant what EK does. Able to handle more people. FXBG Public Radio, if you're looking to do anything like what I'm doing, or you're more serious artist, you like music and like create music, you can do that stuff too. Anyway, I'm spitting on the microphone already. Look at this. I got stuff coming all over the microphone. I bet that sounds lovely to you guys. Yeah, so this is Shock Monkey Radio. I'm your host, the Madman. Welcome. I want to remind you to go to Patreon, patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio. Become a patron today. I would appreciate it. I will say that the patron tiers are going to change. I'm going to get some more mid-range categories on Patreon here very soon, probably by the end of the year. And so, I think the $3 tier is always going to remain. I'm always going to have that. And that'll get you access most everywhere. But like I may consider like producer, tiers. And as a producer, you may have you can have more input on the show if you'd like to participate and stuff like that. Maybe even write articles for me, or to do on the show. If you something you want to rant about once a month or something like that, maybe I could throw it into a show. It's no problem. I could do it. I could do something like that. So I was thinking of doing something like that by the end of the year. So look out for patreon.com. There's maybe more tiers coming. If you have Cash App, you want to send me money that way, use the hashtag shockmonkeyradio, all one word. And you can follow me on social media at DNALETSAW on Twitter. That's the word wasteland spelled backwards. Shock Monkey Radio Redux on Facebook. And at SLRobbins13 on Instagram. I would appreciate it. Thank you very much. So, I know this is going to be our last show for 2 weeks because Thanksgiving's coming up. If I forget to say, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. I'm saying that now. I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. I hope it's not too expensive. Anyway, so I just want to remind you, it's we got the holiday schedule coming up. There may be some changes coming to Patreon and so forth. More tiers, maybe even new projects in the new year. We'll see. It's been quite busy lately, but we're working hard for you. We're working hard for you. All right, so, okay, let's go to the next thing. I was thinking about Archer. You ever seen that show, Archer? Anyway, if you haven't seen it, it's there's a scene in one of the episodes where Archer is communicating with Ray via voice comms. And he's sitting there reading a serial number off this bomb or whatever like that. And he's and he's using the NATO phonetic or not using the NATO phonetic alphabet because Archer's an idiot. And that's kind of the point of the show. And so he's sitting there saying 3, M as in Mancy. But it keeps breaking up. It's what I, as a radioman, would call intermittent connection of a circuit. And so that's why you have the NATO phonetic alphabet. That's why you have NATO, the NATO numbers is for purposes like this. Because, there could be confusion between considering how many letters of the alphabet rhyme in English, B, C, D, E, G, he, G, G, J, G sounds like G. See, that's what I mean. It rhymes. The whole it's like the whole alphabet rhymes. That's why the song is placed to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. The alphabet song is placed to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star because it rhymes. And so that's why they have the NATO phonetic alphabet. And I remember I had to learn all this stuff in the Navy, as a part being a radioman, because when you're doing voice communications from one station to another, you need to use this NATO phonetic alphabet when using voice comms. And so I was thinking to myself, I haven't done any research on this, and I was wondering if I could do the NATO phonetic alphabet correctly. EK's not here to check on me. He's a very busy man. And so, but if you at home, if I screw up in the NATO phonetic alphabet, say something in the comments down below. I know there's the chat and everything, but I don't really get to read any of that till tomorrow. So, say something in the chat. Let's see if I can get through the NATO phonetic alphabet from memory. All right. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, Hotel, India, Juliet, Kilo, Lima, Mike, November, Oscar, Papa, Quebec. What comes after Q? Is it R? B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, Romeo, Sierra, Tango, Uniform, Victor, V, Whiskey, X-Ray, Yankee, and Zulu. Or is it Zebra? I think it's Zulu. Is it Zulu? I think it's Zulu. So I think I may have screwed it up. There may be one or two I missed. I don't know. But it's interesting because, it really, because you're using it so often, it'll really stick in your memory. There's also the numbers, the NATO phonetic numbers. And I think those are more fun and interesting because each of them is given as many syllables as possible. Like 0. And 0 is not O. All right? 0 is not Oscar. I had to do push-ups until I learned that fact at boot camp. O is a letter, 0 is a number. O is a letter, 0 is a number. You know what I'm saying? And it's stuck. It's stuck. O is a letter and 0 is a number for the rest of my life. All right. So you got 0, you got 1, 2, Seriously, that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. Thor. Seriously, that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. Fife. I'm not kidding. Fife. Isn't that a pipe? Like a flute. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9er. You're just adding stuff. You're just cheating at Scrabble, aren't you? You're just cheating at Scrabble. Anyway, I think I heard somebody say 9er, like on the phone at like Walmart or something like that. Some guy sitting there like giving a phone number over the phone. It's like 9er. And I walk by, he's got this, Army veteran hat. I'm like, what's up? Mad respect. Using 9er. 9er still, I get it, because it's important. Anyway, so I was just wondering if I could get through the NATO phonetic alphabet, and I was going to make you guys hold me to account. I got it right. I'm pretty sure it's Zulu. Pretty sure the last one's Zulu. And otherwise, I think I got it right. The numbers are easier because I think I was relaying more numbers. Anyway. So let's go on to this next thing. So I watched Groundhog Day again, and it's a great movie, obviously, and I'm not sure, I think I've reviewed it or talked about it before, but that's not what I want to talk about. It's this one scene with Ned Ryerson, and Ned the Head, I dated your sister for a while until you told me not to, that guy that he sells insurance, bing, that guy. Anyway, so there's a thing where, Bill Murray keeps stepping into that puddle right after he has that interaction with Ned Ryerson. And Ned Ryerson would laugh and say, watch out for that first step. It's a doozy. Kind of summing up that guy's character. It's like, you don't want to buy insurance with me? Yeah. Good luck with your soaker. And that's what that's called. When you step in a puddle, like on a freezing day up north, you live in a northern town. Hey, la, 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 hey, ooh, life in a northern town. But if you're living in a northern town like that, and you're walking along the streets and you step into a puddle and it just soaks your foot and you don't have boots on or something like that, like Bill Murray did in that, and your shoe gets soaked, your foot gets soaked, your pant leg gets soaked, your socks, it's just awful. And you're walking around all day and it's just like freezing this one foot. And then, people would like watch that Adam Sandler movie, Mr. Deeds, and they're like, "How do you get a Blackfoot? A soaker, You got your foot wet, and you stayed out in freezing temperatures for way too long. That's how you get a Blackfoot. And that's what soakers are. And I was thinking about that because it's been years since I lived in upstate New York, Lake Placid, New York, and I remember it would just ruin your whole day. And that's why I love that little scene in Groundhog Days, because it's that moment where he gets that soaker is like, okay, this is going to be one of those shitty ones. You know what I mean? And so it's funny because, every now and then, if you live in the northern town and stuff like that, we got winter coming and stuff like that, you may catch a soaker. It happens from time to time. Maybe a car's coming along and splashes a puddle right on you. It's awful. I get it. Sometimes it's just one of those days. I just want to stay home. I'm calling sick. It's just, like I've had enough. And so I mean, it's it's just watch out for that first step because it's a doozy. And it's I think that's an interesting line that Ned Ryerson says in the movie because hey, he's facing that first step every single day. And that's kind of the metaphor of the movie is that, every single day you got to get up and, take that first step, and it's a doozy. And sometimes you get a soaker, and sometimes you have a beautiful evening with a really good friend, Anyway, moving pretty quickly, but that's okay. I can end the show whenever I want. If Steven Crowder doesn't have to start on time, I can start whenever the hell I want. But usually I like to keep it around 2 p.m. on Wednesdays. So, all right, I want to talk about this thing. I was thinking about, like the angriest people I ever met in my life. So, I, in many ways, like the top 10 angriest people I ever knew in my life fell into one of two categories, and that's ex-smoker, ex-meat eater. Those are the two angriest categories that people I've met in my life. And the ex-smokers are the worst in many ways. It's like they're kind of like higher up in the tiers. But I mean, some of those vegans, they can push all the way up there. And I'm not saying that, it's, my choices for my life are better or than anyone else's. If you don't want to eat meat, if you don't want to smoke, fine. That's probably a healthier decision anyway, but I don't think you should never eat meat. What I'm saying is that, it's the ex-smokers, the people who quit it, they'll say things like, I think it's revolting. It smells so disgusting. And I'm just like, you are lying through your teeth. You are lying through your teeth. As a smoker, I know cigarettes smell like freedom. They smell like freedom. And so you ex-smokers out there, you know that. You smell that aroma, that sweet cigarette aroma, and it's fighting your cells. Your especially if you've been quit for a while. You've been quit for a while and there's no real physiological response to it. It's just this emotional thing happening in your brain. I want that soothing nicotine in my system right now. And so they're angry that they have to fight this resistance. They got to fight just because you choose to smoke. I'm sorry. You got to live with your choices. And I'm not going to, change. I'm not going to change the brand of my cigarettes just because you don't like the smell of that brand. All right. I've actually gotten into conversations like this, or disagreements, I would say. I wouldn't go as far as say arguments, but the cigarettes I make my own cigarettes. I used pipe tobacco, and pipe tobacco is very aromatic, and I like that about pipe tobacco. And so people say, oh, your cigarettes smell like they're really strong. It's like, they're not really strong. They're just very aromatic because I use pipe tobacco. I don't use what is quote unquote cigarette tobacco, which is like chopped finer and I don't like it. It tastes bleh. It's like, ugh. So that's the choices. That's the choices I've made, and the choices you've made. They shouldn't. I'm sorry that you don't like it. But tough cookies. But they're so mad. That anger about the not being able to get nicotine. It's fascinating in many ways. It's like, wow. It's like, I know you haven't had a cigarette in like 5 years, and so there's no possible way you're physiologically having a response right now. And everything that's happening in your body is all based in your mind. It's the psychological addiction has caused your body to get squirt adrenaline into your body. That's crazy. We're weird machines. And then vegan people, they're always hungry. They're always cold. They're always like, I'm tired. And if you want to eat vegetables, fine, that's great. That's super great. More and merrier. I'm not going to fight anyone over tomato. You know what I mean? If it's, celery, it's like weird. You get these post-apocalyptic thing, like you stumble upon the celery farm. I mean, like if I came across two farms in a post-apocalyptic Fallout-like world, and one is a celery farm and one is a tomato farm, and I start sneaking in, well, I wouldn't even sneak into the tomato farm. Or if I'm going into the celery farm and somebody starts shooting at me, but I can go and hide in the tomato farm because nobody's watching the tomato farm, and I could take all the tomatoes I want. I would rather face the guy shooting at me in the celery farm because I would prefer celery over tomato. My point is, it's fine to eat vegetables, but you got to understand, meat, if you're cold, if you can't think, eating meat is what made our brains so big. Because we need that kind of energy, and if you're eating vegetables all the time, you're going to end up like a dumbass brontosaurus, just standing around all day, chewing leaves, And, humans are omnivores where you can absolutely eat everything. And if you want to limit the amount of meat you take in, I understand, I really do, but you really should eat some. Yeah, I mean, friggin' bacon? How do you deny yourself that? But I mean, I guess Jews do it. So, I mean, short of a religious reason, is like, I don't know why you'd want it. If you are not Jewish and you're vegan, that doesn't make sense to me. You've smelled bacon before, right? Anyway. I don't know. Maybe I'm one of those angry smoker meat eaters. I'm pretty high on their list too. Those lists too. If the show stinks today, it's because I'm lazy. But I think I started out pretty good. All right. I want to talk about before we get into the news. I want to talk about subjects leading into the news that I kind of skipped over last week, and so some addendum from this week because obviously this is big news last night. And so I wanted to talk last week about the John Fetterman and Dr. Oz election in Pennsylvania and why the nation was very much focused on that particular race out of so many. And it's obviously it's because it's like what's going on with John Fetterman. He doesn't seem like he's all there, but electing somebody who's not all there into an office is not exactly never been done before. So I mean, and you're basically de facto voting for his wife, his handlers to actually do the job. But the real issue is that Dr. Mehmet Oz, was an outsider of Pennsylvania. He was this Hollywood celebrity, New York TV type, and trying to use his popularity to win an election. And that's why I didn't like Mehmet Oz. That's why I was like, hopefully the Democrats can do something better than this, but hey. And so he was kind of an outsider of Pennsylvania. So I think the electorate of Pennsylvania showed that. It's like, we don't want some outsider celebrity guy, New York, slick talking New York, crudité eating city boy in here, pretending like he's one of us, and in many ways, Fetterman is more like the people of Pennsylvania. Not saying that, they have all had strokes and can't speak correctly. Not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that, they would rather have a hometown boy, than some outsider, a slick talking New Yorker. And I can appreciate that. I really can. It's in many ways, people put up with these impossible choices in many elections. And those impossible choices could be like between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. You know what I mean? And sometimes we have to make those impossible choices, and it's tough. It really is. It really is tough. And so there's been a lot of conservatives whining over the last couple of weeks. I'm sure if you listen to other people's stuff, along the same lines as what I do. There's a lot of disappointment about a red wave, there being no red wave. And it's like, yes, we took the House, the conservatives took the House, and that means they've taken over the majority of the Speaker of the House duties. And so, but barely. And so, I think that's a good thing. I think in the end, it's a good thing. And I know I watched Milo Yiannopoulos on Timcast this past week, and he was like, he said that like a lot of these conservatives wanted a red wave because they wanted revenge. They wanted to shove it down these people's throats. And I think there's part of every person that wants a little bit of revenge, a little bit of catharsis of a red wave. But I mean, I think a red wave is kind of a bad thing, because once you start seeing red waves, you're going to start seeing blue waves more and more often. And that's not what I think is I don't think that's good for politics. In any way whatsoever. However, I will say that our republic is set up in such a way that it's highly unlikely to have a great tsunami or red or blue or even blue wave because of the nature of our elections. Because you're voting for different candidates. There's comes down in Pennsylvania, it comes down to that Fetterman Dr. Oz vote. That's where their fight is between right and left. A lot of them say I prefer conservative, but I'd rather not have this out of town, city slicker. So I'm going to vote Democrat, even though I'm a Republican. So I mean that happens in that particular contest. For us in Virginia, it was Yesli Vega and Abigail Spanberger, and that's where the fight was for us. But I think our republic is specifically designed to avoid, a large sweeping electoral change in Congress. And I think that's a good thing. And I'd rather see a red tide than a red wave. And so a red tide is a good thing. So slowly taking up the House, that's fine. We take the majority of the House. All right, now we can convince some other people here to get on board. All right. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of people still turned off by what the media is saying about these conservatives. Roe versus Wade gets kicked back to the states, and there's a bunch of people who don't know the issue well enough to understand that it's like, oh no, they're going to be stuffing Jesus down our throats any second now. But they are still waking up to some of the real things that are going on. There's like these drag queen story hour stuff. It's like, what's up with that? What's up with these books you're putting in our schools? What's up with this critical race theory thing? And there's a lot of people who are kind of waking up to these facts kind of slowly. And that's how enlightenment goes. Enlightenment is a slow process, especially throughout a community. But people are slowly waking up to this fact. People are getting, school boards. People are paying more attention to their school boards because of these books that their children are, able to access through the school library. And all people, not just conservatives, but, liberals as well, are more concerned about what's going on. They're like, hold on, you're teaching my kids, no matter what race you are, you're teaching my kids that, somebody's skin is different, because that guy has white skin, he's got all this privilege and shouldn't be given opportunities. It's like, that's absurd. That's anti-American. A lot of people are waking up to these facts. As, boys can't be girls. You can't switch genders. People are slowly waking up to these facts. And this is what a red tide is. All right. And a red tide, doesn't necessarily mean that, the whole House and the whole Senate and the presidency should all be Republican. I think that that's just as dangerous as, as a Democratic majority has been. That's just as dangerous. And I think our republic is able to withstand all this. So I don't fear anything. I think that we're moving in the right direction. I think that, people are starting to be enlightened. And I think that, this whole Trump thing is really going to put a big old soggy cheeseburger in the machine. You know what I'm saying? Or should I use the classic wooden shoe sabotage analogy? Anyway, oops, I hit back. I lost my place. But I wanted to talk about Trump because last night Trump announced, it's going to be the first story. Trump announced that he's going to run in 2024. So, yeah. I'm left of Tim Pool on this. I don't think, I'll put it this way. I think America deserves better. I think that the Republican Party deserves better. I think the modern conservative movement in America deserves better than Donald Trump as the leader of the party. Granted, last night he wasn't as bombastic until the end when he started going off script, but he wasn't as gregarious or, loud as he usually has been in the past, but he was still boastful to the point of untruth. He was, he declared really early, like after the midterms, a couple weeks after the midterms, declares, really early for 2024. And so, I think America can do better. In a pinch, if it comes down between a vote between him and Biden, I'll vote for him. Because let's be honest, it's like I'm not afraid of him being in the office because he did a good job last time. I was happy with his performance in the job. I think he screwed it up. He started screwing up there at the end with the COVID thing. I think he started screwing up there at the end. But, I think he could have caught his stride again, given a second term. I'd rather it be somebody more sane. Because, after all, there's a lot of people that Trump turns off immediately, and I get it. I really do. I feel in many ways like I did in 2015 and 2016, where I'm just like, I don't know if this guy's got the temperament for the job. TV reality show, sure. Business mogul, sure. But president of the United States, I don't know. I don't think so. Just because you did it once and you did it okay pretty well, doesn't mean that you can, you can't step in the same river twice, as they say. You know what I mean? It's a different ball game now. And got a lot of work cut out for you if you're going to, get to 2024. And there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going to happen between now and then. 2 years, 2 years of news cycles between now and the election of 2024 is a long time for the media to go crazy. And in many ways, I think maybe he's just trying to drive traffic to Truth Social. Because I bet you he's not going to come back to Twitter. I bet you he's just going to be on Truth Social and is going to force all these journalists to create accounts at Truth Social so they can write hit pieces about him. Oh, and the media is so excited to hear this news so early because now they have something to write about. Can you imagine the next 2 years of the media just talking about Trump or how it relates to Trump or how Trump feels about something or how they feel about Trump or how Trump feels about seaweed body wraps and what Trump feels about kelp tape and what I don't know why anyone would want these questions, but they have an unending font of topics to write about because they are so unoriginal they can't think of anything else to write. You know, they just want to keep on doing as they've been doing for the last, 10 years. 10 years. Still writing about the same stuff. And they're trying to bore us out of the news in many ways. Trying to bore us out of the news. Anyway. That's all I'm going to say about that particular thing. Let's get into the news worth knowing. Imagine the thing going on. I'm probably going to have to shut off the show myself. Let's get into the news. So let's talk about, here we go again. Trump ignores GOP rivals and stolen election claims in 2024 presidential announcement. It's not true. He did kind of mention stolen election claims. He brought China into the conversation on that. So, okay, this is out of West Palm Beach, Florida. Former President Donald Trump on Tuesday announced his 2024 candidacy for president in a speech that punched hard at Democrats but skipped over his GOP rivals, staying on message in a way strikingly different from his traditional rallies. Trump spoke at a moment when the Republicans were distancing themselves from him after lackluster midterm elections for the party. GOP lawmakers, even some traditionally supportive of Trump, hoped it would delay an announcement until after Georgia Senate runoffs, fearing his rhetoric could divide Republicans and drag down GOP candidate Herschel Walker. However, in Trump's speech, his tone subdued compared to his traditional campaign rallies, avoided intra-party sniping and denials of President Biden's 2020 election victory. There was no reference to Ron DeSanctimonious, which is a horrible nickname. You're going to have to get a better one. Ron DeMantis. That's even better. I think that's better. Ron DeMantis. You should hire me, Trump. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell or other rivals Trump has gone after recently in the past few days on his Truth Social account. So apparently he's been ranting. Oh boy, we're going to get to hear everything Trump's saying. See, that's the thing about Truth Social is like, if I had an account, I don't have to listen to Trump's truths. Is that what they call them? Truths? I don't have to listen to it. And just mute. Unfollow. Don't care. And, Twitter used to be like that too. I don't know if it still is. If you don't want to listen to somebody, don't listen to them. Anyway. But now we're going to have to because he's running. Anyway, instead, he largely focused on touting himself as the person to fix problems plaguing the U.S. under Biden. America's comeback starts right now, Trump told an enthusiastic crowd that included many members of his inner circle at various points chanted, Trump, 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 USA, USA. Of course. In order to make America great and glorious again, I am announcing tonight my candidacy for President of the United States, Trump said. We're all going to have to dust out our Trump voices. Trump hit on many of his signature issues, including crime, drugs, illegal immigration. He also covered new ground, calling for congressional term limits, regulations on stock trading for federal lawmakers, and lobbying bans for former members of the cabinet and Congress. Trump slammed Biden on his withdrawal from Afghanistan, alleging that the current president made the U.S. a laughingstock, which is true. He also attacked Biden for the U.S.'s assistance to Ukraine in its war against Russia. Perhaps the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Trump said, referring to Afghanistan. Most lives left Americans behind and surrendered $85 billion of the finest military equipment anywhere in the world. Unlike Biden possibly getting us into World War III, which can seriously happen, I will keep America out of foolish and unnecessary foreign wars. I fell right back into it, didn't I? It's a perishable skill, but it's not been that long. However, he painted an optimistic future of the U.S. if he is reelected. I am running because I believe the world has not yet seen the true glory of what this nation can be. We will heal our divisions and bring our people back together through incredible success. We will shatter the forces of tyranny, and we will unleash the glories of liberty for ourselves and our children, and for generations yet to come. America's golden age is just ahead. See, I'm pretty good at it, right? I don't know. It sounds different to you. When I listen back to my voice, it's like, that doesn't sound like him. Sounds like him in my head. Anyway, the crowd was filled with Trump loyalists, including name droppers. Roger Stone, Mike Lindell, Devin Nunes, the usual suspects. Much of Trump's family was also there, including his wife Melania, his children Eric and Barron, daughter-in-law Laura, and son-in-law Jared Kushner. Trump's presidential announcement comes several months before modern White House candidates traditionally announce their presidential bids. The midterms are not even finished, and some House races are still uncalled, and the Georgia runoffs weeks away. Trump also veered into some of his previous grievances. He griped that the media has not covered the success rate of his congressional endorsements in 2022 and alleged that China interfered in the 2020 election. He attacked Christopher Steele for his discredited dossier, slammed the FBI raid of his home, and complained about subpoenas for members of his family. However, Trump generally spent a few seconds on those issues before getting back to the message. He also attacked the use of mail-in ballots, but skipped the false stolen election claims that often come when he addresses the topic. All right, and there's the history. He lost to Biden. Former president is heavily involved in the midterms, throwing his support. Okay, this is good. The former president was heavily involved in the midterms, throwing his support behind Republican candidates across the nation. During the primaries, the majority of Trump-endorsed candidates were victorious, but many of his most important endorsements struggled and lost in the general elections, including candidates for senator and governor. And that's a very good indicator right there. Is that, if Trump supported a candidate, that means that there are areas of this country where Trump's supporting somebody is like a pariah. It makes you a pariah. I'm telling you, Trump turns a lot of people off. Turns me off quite frequently. I know he's done a good job, but it's going to be hard for a lot of people to plug their nose and vote for him. So I think America deserves better. End rant. All right, let's go on to this next story. People have been crying about this. I know you've seen it. Okay, so FTX's Sam Bankman-Fried collapse is compared to Enron and Bernie Madoff. The collapse of cryptocurrency exchange FTX amid reports that at least $1 billion in client funds disappeared, impacting potentially about 1 million customers, has prompted comparisons to some of the most notorious financial scandals in recent decades, yet the magnitude of customers impacted is much larger. Excuse me. FTX, which at its peak was the third largest cryptocurrency exchange, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protections on Friday, and the company confirmed over the weekend that millions of dollars worth of assets are unaccounted for. The company's founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, faces allegations that he secretly transferred $10 billion from FTX to Alameda Research, his hedge fund, which has also filed for bankruptcy. The committee is facing a criminal probe into the Bahamas. And on Tuesday, Senate Banking Committee Chairman Sherrod Brown from Ohio called on Bankman-Fried to appear before his panel. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers said FTX's collapse has similarities to some of the most significant bankruptcies in recent decades. A lot of people have compared this to Lehman. This is a quote. I would compare it to Enron. This is what, Summers told Bloomberg's Wall Street Week. Summers described some aspects of FTX's downfall that reminded him of Enron. The smartest guys in the room, not just financial error, but certainly from the reports, whiffs of fraud. Stadium namings very early in a company's history. Vast explosion of wealth that quite nobody understands where it came from. Here's a look at some of the most infamous corporate collapse scandals in the recent decades. Lehman Brothers, Enron, Madoff's Ponzi scheme, Tyco scandal. Yeah, so they're just giving examples of what it's like. Oh, should I read the comments? Why is this one of the most biggest scams? Illegality, lawlessness in this country keeps coming back to being involved by the Democratic Party. Okay, it's just a political rant. Only Democrats commit these crimes. Which is silly. It's a silly thing. So it's funny, I think, because, that money never really existed anyway. Creating zeros is like, this is why I'm not on board with like, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, etc. As soon as anyone realizes that, it's just, oh, it's not really worth anything. Yeah, it's just like electrons and printouts, computer printouts. And you might say, madman, isn't that the same with U.S. currency? And it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And as soon as everyone figures, oh, this isn't really worth anything, just what we believe it's worth. Yeah, and that's why I think we need to get onto the back to the gold standard post haste. Yes, it could make inflation worse. Yes, you're right. But in the long run, it's better for everybody if we go back to the gold standard, because all this cryptocurrency business is doing is doing what the Federal Reserve has already done. People are like, why is the Federal Reserve so mad at, why are these government banks so mad at cryptocurrency? Because you're copying their scam, you're copying. You're breaching our racket, kid. So that's how you fix all this. It's like you get back on the gold standard. All right. Then Bitcoin, people realize that's just electrons. Anyway, let's go on to this next story. So this is obviously very sad about the UVA shooting, something a little closer to home. So the UVA football team cancels their final home game of the season. So, university football game against Coastal Carolina, set for this weekend, was canceled on Wednesday, today, following a shooting that left 3 players dead, the school announced. The Cavaliers have 2 games remaining on the schedule. It remains it's unclear whether they will play their rivalry game next week against Virginia Tech and Blacksburg. Quote, the Virginia Athletics Department announced today, November 16th, that Cavaliers home football game versus Coastal Carolina, scheduled for Saturday, November 19th, has been canceled. The school said the decision was made following the shooting of 5 students on ground Sunday night. The incident resulted in the deaths of 3 of the members of the UVA team, Devin Chandler, Lavelle Davis Jr., and Deshaun Perry, the school said. Christopher Darnell Jones Jr., the University of Virginia ex-football player accused of murdering 3 of his former teammates on a charter bus after returning from a class field trip, was slapped with additional charges in connection with the 2 surviving victims. His motive remains unknown. Jones was initially charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder in connection to the deaths of active UVA football players Devin Chandler, Lavelle Davis, and Deshaun Perry, as well as 3 counts of using a handgun in commission of a felony. 2 other UVA students were wounded and hospitalized. The team has not practiced in 2 days. One of the survivors is a UVA football player, Michael Hollins Jr., who was initially listed in critical condition and was intubated as of Monday night. He underwent a second surgery on Tuesday and was taken off ventilator and is said to be doing well, according to Baton Rouge-based attorney Gordon McKiernan. So, thoughts and prayers to those people who are, killed by this guy and the people who are wounded. I mean, it's an awful, awful thing, obviously. It's... before teaching a kid how to play football, you should probably teach them how to deal with anger and conflict. I think a lot of these kids these days, they don't have somebody teaching them how to handle with their anger and conflict. It's like, you could be angry, but I mean, the solution should never be to like get a gun. I think that, there needs to be more good people in the world saying stuff like that. It's like, I know you get angry. I know you have conflict with people. You feel like there's going to be no end in sight, especially when you're a teenager. When you're a teenager, you think every pain is going to last forever, That first heartbreak, you thought it was going to last the rest of your life, didn't it? You thought that pain was going to last the rest of your life. And maybe in some ways it did. But, I mean, it certainly wasn't the way you obsessed about it when you're a teenager, And so I'm not saying that he had some sort of relationship with one of these guys or anything like that. But, I mean, it's when you feel emotions as a teenager, they're just so damn intense that you need to have somebody you can go home to and talk about who's going to say, like, the last thing you want to do is go get a gun and go try to solve the problem that way. It's a damn shame. I don't know, before you teach them how to play football, before they get that far into college, teach them something like how to control your temper, not take the most... caustic route. It's a shame. Anyway, let's get moved to a more what's that called? Macro level, like a bigger global level. So Stoltenberg says no NATO Article 4 until investigation in Poland missile explosion completed. So I don't know if you heard about this. So NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Wednesday that there will be no calls to initiate Article 4 until the outcome of the investigation of the explosion on Poland's eastern border that killed 2 was completed. I spoke with President Andrzej Duda last night. That's a cool name, bro. Spoke with President Andrzej Duda last night. We agreed on the importance of awaiting the outcome of the investigation, Stoltenberg told reporters. We don't have the final outcome of that, but we have no indication that this was a deliberate attack. Stoltenberg, Duda, and President Biden have signaled that preliminary results of the investigation show that the rocket that landed in the Polish village of Przewado, forgive me, I don't know Polish or any of those. There's so many consonants together. Anyway, it was likely not a Russian missile, but part of Ukraine's air defense systems. The NATO chief said officials would act accordingly based upon the final results of the investigation. On Thursday, Duda's administration said he was informed Stoltenberg that it was highly probable that the Polish ambassador to NATO will request to invoke Article 4. Oh, my Lord. Fox News could not immediately reach Duda's office for comment on if the Polish government is in agreement with Stoltenberg to hold off on convening NATO members. Spelling error, editing error. Hello. Until the investigation is complete. Article 4 in the NATO Charter will allow any member nation to bring forward a security concern by convening a meeting of the North Atlantic Council to consult on issues relating to independence, sovereignty, and security. Initiating Article 4 could be seen to a prelude to employing Article 5, which calls for a collective defense if there is an attack on even one member nation. Though initiating Article 4 does not mean that NATO allies have to take direct action. The consultation of all NATO member nations should be seeking a strong signal to an aggressor. Would send a strong signal to an aggressor like Russia that the military alliance is taking seriously the issue at hand. NATO maintains that Kiev is not at fault for the explosion that killed 2 Poles, even if it is confirmed that Ukrainian air defense systems landed in Poland. Stoltenberg on Wednesday said that Russia bears ultimate responsibility for the tragedy because of the ongoing war in Ukraine. All right. Ultimately responsible. Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's Russia's fault that, some Ukrainian air defense missiles fizzled out, I don't think that's Russia's fault. Unless they're using electronic countermeasures or something, I guess they're direct. But that doesn't mean they expected the thing to fizzle out and land on 2 people, kill 2 people. What this really concerns me with is that somebody has been saying, maybe we should look into Article 4 at NATO, which means that somebody out there wants to get involved in a war in NATO. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that, like Ukraine asking for NATO membership, and I'm just like, is war the ultimate goal of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization? I would like to think it's no, but if you look at why it was formed, it's like you got to ask yourself, it's like, well, follow this to logical conclusion. What is NATO's purpose? Is it to take Russia out? And that's Russia's point. That's Russia's point of view, is that they think NATO is there to take them out. And when there's talk like this, I can understand Russia's position and say, hey, what's this? You got this huge organization and all they're about is taking us down. And granted, Russia's not the nicest guy on the block, that's for sure. But I mean, it's almost like I have to say to NATO, shit or get off the pot. And I would prefer you got off the pot. If Russia invades some country, let them deal with that. I'm sorry, the strong will survive. Seems a little mean on my part, I understand, but anyway, I don't know. I have feelings about NATO. I'm not sure if it's a good thing. I'm not even sure the UN's a good thing. The idea of like multinational groups and stuff like that seems weird. It'd be better if like nations had like just allies with other nations. Like for example, you're like if you're the United States and you have a treaty with like the United Kingdom, it would have nothing. It could and should have nothing to do with your treaties with other nations. You know, and if the UK says, "Oh, we don't want you to be friends with Germany," then we either honor that agreement or you break that agreement with the UK. You know what I mean? It's like, do it honorably. You don't need some like world court. I think that's a bad idea. That's kind of Rosicrucians, Georgia Guidestone's weird to me, Anyway, I'm not into globalism. Not into it at all. Anyway, and I think the UN and NATO are, stepping stones to globalism, and I don't think that's a good thing. Anyway, we got two more stories. I usually like to end on happier stories. What was my second one? Okay, yeah, that's a little funnier. This is a good story. Warm feelings from in my heart for this story, and the next one's funny. So this one is New York's concealed carry gun law partially reinstated by federal appeals court. A federal appeals court on Tuesday temporarily reinstated parts of New York's new concealed carry law after a judge last week blocked some provisions that restrict the carrying of firearms in certain public spaces. Excuse me. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals issued a temporary injunction while the legal challenge filed by a Second Amendment's right group made its way through the courts. Defendants, appellates seek a stay pending appeal and an emergency interim stay of the preliminary injunction issued by the district court on November 7th, 2022. Tuesday's ruling states, "It is hereby ordered," in all caps, "that the temporary stay is granted pending the panel's consideration of the motion." On November 7th, District Court Judge Glenn Sotheby said New York's concealed carry laws invoked unprecedented constitutional violations and granted a partial preliminary injunction in favor of gun owners of America, forcing the state to cease enforcement of parts of the law, which was signed by Governor Kathy Hochul in July. Sotheby ruled the state can still prevent people from carrying guns in Times Square, public playgrounds, libraries, nurseries, and preschools. However, mental hospitals, places of worship, public parks, zoos, theaters, conference centers, protesters, and bars are no longer off limits for people with a concealed carry permit. Tuesday's ruling blocks Sotheby's order. New York has once again defied the Constitution and the Supreme Court's Bruin decision. GOA, Gun Owners of America, Senior Vice President Eric Pratt said in response to the Tuesday's ruling. And this will bring us one step closer to standing before SCOTUS, where we know that Justice Clarence Thomas is waiting to slap down New York lawbreakers once again. The GOA lawsuit came after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled earlier this year that a state law requiring citizens to show proper cause for self-defense to obtain a concealed carry permit was unconstitutional. New York lawmakers made changes to the concealed carry law after the decision. Golly. Anyway, so I think that's good news for New Yorkers. I mean, it's funny because, even like in upstate New York, their laws are real tight. And they got to deal with what do they got? They got moose up there? I don't know. I never got into hunting or knew anything about hunting until like Georgia, when I lived in Georgia, which I was like 12. And so, yeah, I was thinking about hunting. Okay, where was I? Gun laws. I think people walking in New York should have the right to get a concealed carry permit and carry a gun. I mean, it's New York City after all, it's criminals who get guns don't get them legally. You know what I mean? And if a gun that is bought legally by a criminal and used illegally by a criminal, then it becomes, that's a crime, obviously. So anyway, that's my point, is that then is like maybe they don't deserve a firearm. And, these felons, if a felon I think if a felon commits a crime using a firearm, I think they should get their, Second Amendment rights taken away for a while. I don't know. Is it a privilege or is it a right? I guess it's a right. Yeah, it's a right. Like even ex-criminals need to defend themselves. So my point is that, there's, I think a fully armed society is I'm not saying we should like require people to open carry firearms everywhere in this country. That's a little insane. I like the concealed carry permit. It's like you can carry them, but you don't necessarily have to carry them out in the open, make people nervous. Because some people get nervous when they see open carry. I live in Virginia, for God's sakes. Some people get nervous. Anyway, so I think it's a good thing for New York. I think that if something bad goes down in the streets of New York, and having more people armed I'm not saying that everybody who carries a firearm is a good person, but they would prefer order in their city over, some others who want to create disorder. And so I'm saying there's a larger majority of people who want to keep the peace in our world. And so the more people who have arms, the better. Just my opinion. I could be wrong. Now let's go on this last story, then I can get out of here, and I got to shut this thing off by myself. I'm surprised it didn't time out on the screen. All right. Let's see. Airline passenger stuck between couple with baby gets a huge response on Twitter. Okay. Is that what Twitter is? Is it just a place for people who are stuck on some long plane ride for people to rant? Is that all Twitter is? Or is it like the only thing that connects is Twitter because of Starlink or something? I don't know. Anyway, because I remember like Sydney Watson recently caused a stir in the news because she was stuck between two larger individuals on a plane, and she tweeted through the whole thing. Anyway, an airline passenger has sparked debate on social media after he shared his experience of being seated in a middle seat between two parents and their infant child. Sam Nev, N-E-V-E, hope I got that right, who on Twitter calls himself a former journo, okay, and says he's presently building digital stuff in London, expressed his confusion at seating arrangements when he boarded his flight. Just boarded a flight, he quote, I just boarded a flight and I'm sat with a couple and their baby, but the husband refused to give up his aisle seat, so now I'm just in the middle of them, the man tweeted. The tweet is retweeted 300 times and received over nearly 2,000 replies. Nev said he did not say where he was traveling, either to or from, but said in the replies that the flight lasted a couple of hours and there was no harm done. He added that the husband ignored his wife and child the entire flight, saying that he stuck his headphones in, ate an entire pack of Haribo, and didn't talk to her for the entire 2-hour flight. Some people are confused to why the man would force his wife and child to sit next to a total stranger. Others noted that the couple probably booked the seats hoping the middle seat would go unsold. Yeah. Let me guess, the mom's taking care of the baby while the husband uses you as a shield so that he can chill out, one person wrote. He's a buffer's own. My husband and I ended up, this is a quote, my husband and I ended up separated on a flight with our baby girl. After the flight took off, I walked over and handed him the baby and then went back and took a nap. Yeah. Another person commented, people could be quite strange. I once had a window seat and a man on the aisle seat refused to let me go to the loo. What? The wonderful steward saw this and whisked me off to first class and gave me the full VIP treatment. Top babe. That's a great ending to the story, but oh my God. If some guy wouldn't let me oh my God. The air marshal would be putting cuffs on me. It's like, you are getting up one way or another. You choose. You want to roll into the aisle, or do you want to stand up like a man and make way for me, a man? Whew. That would make me hot, so hot, especially when you're cramped on a tiny little plane and it's like, won't let you get up. Dude, I want to punch somebody right now. Anyway, Nev said in another tweet that it was, I see a bunch of Haribo bears up here, so tweet that it was very busy, full flight, apparently indicating that he could not be moved to a different seat on the airplane. Other people defended the husband, suggesting that perhaps he was claustrophobic, afraid of flying, or needed the additional space provided by the aisle seat. Others said that perhaps the couple just wanted a specific seat arrangement. Quote, he has a right to keep it and not move to the middle. Always you people who think your entitlement comes first. You bought the middle seat. One posted one comment. Another said, why should he give up his seat for someone, not some non-entity he doesn't know? I have so many questions, so many personal questions. look, the couple might have been fighting. You don't know. He could have been terrified of flying, and she knows that. So they originally arranged that she's going to watch the baby, and they hoped that nobody would book that middle seat so they could put the baby there and, let it play or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how you keep a baby still on an airplane. Aren't they usually crying their eyes out? Anyway, so, I mean, it's, the pressure changes. They don't know what the hell's going on. I'm like, this is unnatural. And you're right. Yes, it is unnatural. And so, there's so many questions. But I mean, when it comes to, like, if you're a man and you got your wife and your kid in the other seat and you got another dude between you, don't you think that is a little bit weird? I mean, maybe he wanted to, space to stretch out. I know that's like when I get an aisle seat, that's what I like, is I can kind of like keep my one leg in the aisle so I can keep stretched out so my knees don't lock up and stuff like that. You got to pull it in when the cart comes by and all that. But hey, most of the time you can stretch it all the way out, one leg. And so, yeah, it's pretty good. Oh, now it timed out and the screen's gone. Anyway, but that is the last story. I'm just curious. I have so many questions. So many questions. So I want to remind you again to go over to patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio, become a patron. I would appreciate it. There you can, if you're going to get into one of the tiers, get the $3 tier for now. Unless you want to wait until after the new year and, see the other tiers. I'm going to make more tiers, maybe let you have more access into the show and so forth. But that'll be coming soon. So look out for that on patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio. If you want to send me money through Cash App, use the hashtag shockmonkeyradio. I think it's up here. See, I can't see the play out. I think it's up here. shockmonkeyradio, all one word, on Cash App. You can send me money that way. You can also follow me on social media. I think it's over here. Or is it, maybe it's over here. Anyway, I'm at Danalitsaw, which is the word wasteland spelled backwards, DNALETSAW on Twitter, Shock Monkey Radio Redux on Facebook, and at SLRobbins13 on Instagram. I also have books available for digital download. You can find those on Amazon.com. Search for the author Scott L. Robbins with 2 T's and 2 B's. I got the Exit 13 books. I got the Ravings of a Madman book, and I got the Bunny Years, a memoir. Story about a superhero. So you can check those out on Amazon, or you can follow the links down in the description below tomorrow. So this has been Shock Monkey Radio. I'm the Madman, and I love you.